Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Mona Al-Adrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. In today's podcast, I'll be speaking about the reasons why many Muslims can't or won't leave their toxic marriages. So the intention behind this podcast is to create an awareness of why many women and men feel so stuck in their marriages that feel like prisons. So this podcast will inshallah help people to assess their own situations and understand why they feel so stuck. And perhaps they'll find the inspiration to finally leave a relationship or environment where they're being abused. And you can apply this information to, living in a toxic family environment as well. It's not just for those who are married. It's for those who are being abused by their parents, by their siblings, by their friends whom they live with, and so on. Okay? And the podcast is also for those who tend to judge people who choose to stay in toxic environments. So I will go through all of the main reasons why people choose to stay, so people can understand all the implications and the dangers and the risks that people would be taking if they were to leave those toxic relationships and environments. So I'm hoping that people will be more supportive and kinder to those who are in these situations and relationships, inshallah, after this podcast. And originally, I wanted to give some tips and advice and also some strategies to those who wanted to escape a dangerous situation and those who wanted to leave a miserable and toxic marriage or family environment. However, I decided not to for two main reasons. The first one is knowing narcissists and psychopaths are listening to my podcasts. And I know this because people tell me their malignant husbands and wives are listening and they're fuming. Okay, they're already fuming that their manipulations and tactics have all been exposed. So if I was to list all the things you need to do to escape them, they'll be prepared, and this will make it much harder for you to escape them later. So you'll have no other choice but to sit tight and wait for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rescue you from your situation. And the second reason is there is no fixed exit strategy for everyone. Okay, so I might give you advice and tips and strategies. However, they may not fit your circumstances. They may not be beneficial or safe for your circumstances. And when people are desperate, they'll try anything. And unfortunately, this can result in horrible consequences. I mean, it could lead to more physical abuse. It could lead to something even more sinister than this. So be very careful when you take advice from people, especially online, about leaving a toxic relationship, especially if your abuser is very dangerous. Okay, you need professional help for this. You need to go to a therapist, a counselor, a coach, and you need to explain the whole situation. They need to know the history of the relationship. They need to know if you've tried escaping before and what the consequences were. They need to know what kind of person you're married to or living with. They need to know how dangerous they are. They need to know what you've tried before. They need to know so much information to help you find the safest way out. Okay, don't take any advice you hear on the internet because, like I said, it could be dangerous for your well-being and can backfire horribly on children too. Narcissists and psychopaths will always punish you for trying to leave. So I don't advise that you take any steps before consulting a professional, maybe an imam, a sheikh, a mediator in the community, and make sure you have a support system in place. Because if you do this on your own, with no support at all from your family or other social groups, or even friends and neighbours, then you're really going to struggle, okay? So be very careful about this and take it seriously. And I've mentioned this before, this is the exact reason why abusers isolate you from everyone. They know from the moment they meet you that they're going to abuse you. And they need you to be in a very vulnerable position where you fear leaving or you won't be able to leave. And they can only do this by isolating you from your social groups, from your friends, from your families, And they do this by breaking down those relationships. So they destroy your relationships with your friends by stopping you seeing them and by causing so much chaos in the family. They really won't like your caring parents and brothers and best friends, and they cause fitna between everyone, and it's so you don't find a support system when you need one. Okay, they don't let you visit your family, they don't let you do so many things. Sometimes they won't even allow you to have a phone. I know someone who's been married for 15 years and she doesn't have a mobile phone because her husband and her in-laws are super worried that she'll either expose them or escape. She hasn't had a phone for over 10 years. And her parents are okay with this because they simply told her to obey her husband in this matter. She's only allowed to use her husband's phone to make any calls, and these calls are supervised. And she's also not allowed to have any friends or go out alone. So this is how controlling these people are. Okay, because they know what they're going to do to you, unfortunately. And you've got to be really careful when you move abroad with someone. This is why I advise against it, because when you're isolated out there with no friends and no family and no support system, this is when people get stuck. Okay, this isolation is done with the intention to imprison you in marriage. This is why so many people find themselves stuck, because during the relationship they don't notice how the abuser works diligently to destroy all your relationships and support networks. It's done slowly, it's done in a subtle manner, and you don't realize it until the day you want to leave. The day when the abuse gets so bad and you make that decision to escape or leave. And then you realize you've got no one to help you. Either because your family and friends are terrified of your abuser because your abuser is a psychopath, or they have destroyed the relationships by causing so much fitna between you and them, so you don't find anyone there for you, or because the abuser knows that you also come from a narcissistic family and they're not going to be there for you. So there are different reasons behind this, but when people wake up from their slumber and realize the narcissist has cut off all of those ties to the people who could have helped them, that's when it dawns on them that they are stuck. Okay? That's when they realize that they are in a dangerous situation, or they're simply just stuck with their abuser because it's very difficult for them to find the support they need to be able to leave. Now, this abuse that they're enduring could be from a malignant narcissist or psychopath, or even a narcissistic man-child or woman-child. And sometimes they're not being abused at all. Perhaps they had an arranged marriage to someone they don't like or they're not attracted to, but they feel stuck because of family pressure or feeling guilty for wanting to leave someone and hurting their feelings. So inshallah, I will go through all of these reasons in a moment. Before I jump in, I know it's a long intro today, I'd like to kindly remind you to like the podcast if you find it helpful. Please do share it with other people whom you feel could benefit from this information. You can hit the bell icon to subscribe to the channel and receive notifications about when I next drop a podcast. And you can also sign up to the newsletter on the website to receive emails about podcast releases and other news. And if you haven't read it yet, please do grab a copy of the Muslim Narcissist book. I've written below where you can purchase it from. It includes all of the foundational information needed to help you understand all of these podcasts. Okay, so these podcasts are supplementary to the book. I'd also like to welcome everyone who's new here. I pray that you find this channel beneficial. Try and listen to the podcast from the very beginning so you understand everything to date. And if you need one-to-one counselling and coaching, please do click on the link below in the description box to read all the information about my sessions and programs. And if you need to contact me directly, you can email me. My email address is also below in the description box. Okay, so let's jump into this, and I'll start off by saying that, in my opinion, there are 4 types of people who are stuck in marriages. The first type are those who believe they're stuck, okay, because they believe Islam teaches them to stay in a toxic marriage, so they think they're stuck. The second type are those who are stuck because of cultural expectations. So you may know that Islam permits you to exit a toxic environment. However, cultural expectations trap you. The third type are those who are stuck because they are codependent and they are trauma bonded to their abusers. So they may know that Islam permits them to leave a toxic situation, and they may have supportive families and friends and also communities, but the trauma bond keeps them stuck. And sometimes this trauma bond looks like hiding behind the excuse that they are staying for the children. Okay, so they're being abused day and night. They're in a very miserable marriage or in a family home, and they say, I can't leave because of the children. So their codependency doesn't allow them to stand up for themselves and their children, because their children are also being subjected to all the abuse that they witness every day. And if it's not every day, then it's regularly. And the fourth type are those who are truly stuck. Okay, they're well and truly trapped. They have no support system, they've got no money, they've got nowhere to go, they're being held hostage, they're being threatened with murder and all sorts. I'll go into it later in detail. However, there are people who really, really are stuck, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can rescue them from their situation. Okay? So I do recommend that you grab a notepad and pen if you are in this situation and take some notes so that you can identify exactly where you are. And by doing this, you can help identify the core reasons of why you stay stuck, and it will give you some clarity as well on what you need to do. So I'm going to start off with speaking about the reasons why women feel stuck, and then inshallah I'll come on to the reasons why men feel stuck. And I'm separating them because some of the reasons are different and they need different explanations. Right, so let's start off with financial dependence. So this is in no particular order. It's not an order of priority or level of danger. I'm just going to go through them as a list and explain them inshallah as I go along. So for many women, being totally financially dependent on a narcissistic husband or an uncle or brothers or a father is what cripples them, because they have no independent income of their own. They're not working, they have no savings, they've got no assets, they have no financial help from their families or anywhere else. This is what causes them to be trapped. And this is why so many men financially abuse the women under their care. It's to make sure you never escape. It's to always make sure that they have the upper hand and full control over the finances of the home, so they know exactly what you're doing and what you're spending at all times. So your allowance might be restricted. Okay, they may not allow you to apply for benefits or universal credit or anything like that, because they don't want you to have any independent income of your own, so you don't save up money to one day escape them. And this only applies to narcissistic men. So what I'm saying has nothing to do with good men. Okay, good men aren't like this at all. I'm talking about narcissistic men and how they abuse you financially to keep you stuck. I speak to so many women who tell me that they can't leave their situation because they have no money. And sometimes they have no qualifications either. So their husbands stop them from getting an education or completing their education, so they worry about getting a job. And if their husbands or fathers or brothers stop them from working, they also worry about how much time has passed, because they would have fallen back in experience. So many employers, they want people who are up to date with all the courses and experience and programs and projects. So if the last time you worked was 5 to 10 years ago, then you're less likely to find a job because you've missed out on so much. So you'll find that sometimes husbands will stop you from taking the courses you need to take to keep on top of your career. All of that's done on purpose. Okay, it's to stop you from progressing with your career, and it's to stop you from no longer needing them financially. Okay, because when you free yourself from financial control, you can leave, and they won't have that. They want you to fear poverty. They want you to fear being homeless. They want you to fear being out on the street. And a lot of women do fear this because they don't have a penny to their name. So thinking about being homeless scares so many women that it causes them to just stay where they are and continue being abused because it's better than being out on the street. And the women who fear this don't have any family, or they don't have any supportive family. So they may come from abusive homes where the father's already told them they can't come back, the brothers have washed their hands off their responsibility, and they truly know they would be homeless, and they don't want to go to a homeless shelter. They don't want to go to a place where people are severely mentally unstable and taking drugs and so on to cope. Okay, so all of these are fears that women have of what could happen if they were to escape or be divorced, and their abuser often reminds them of this. They say things like, if you get divorced, you'll be on the streets or end up in dirty hostels with lots of drug addicts. And they take advantage of these women not having supportive family and friends, or having no family at all, and they taunt them with this constantly. They scaremonger them into staying. So these women really are truly stuck because they've got nowhere to go. They've got no money, no savings, and they have no one to help them out. Even when they go to their local sheikh, he doesn't take them seriously because the husband or the father know how to manipulate him. And in many cases, lots of people don't believe the victim. So she may go and expose him in public, but because he's built such a great reputation for himself and his community, people don't believe her. Because he shows his good side to everyone. He shows his good side to his family and your family and the community and the mosque committee and everyone. So when you go to complain about him, no one listens to you. No one believes you. And then he'll launch a smear campaign against you to say that you're brainwashed, you have sihr, you've lost your mind, you're making things up, and all of that. So unfortunately, women who have been silenced for so long are often not listened to by their communities, and they don't get the support they need. Lots of people ask, why is the narcissist so nice with everyone but horrible to me, horrible to their family? It's because they are creating a persona for themselves to look like the good guy or the good woman, so that when people start to complain about them and their abuse, people don't believe them. Okay, that's the whole point of doing it. They're so helpful with their neighbours. They're so kind to strangers. They are so loving and charitable, and they do all sorts for other people, but not their family members. They may be so stingy with their family, but so generous with others. And it's because they know one day they're going to need their support. When you go complaining about them, telling people about all the horrific things they do, your neighbours are going to be offended because they benefit from this narcissist doing their gardening and doing their shopping and helping them cross the road and doing all sorts of things, right? They say, no, what are you talking about? He's the loveliest man I know. He's always there for me. He's always buying me things. He's always fixing my car. He's always doing this and that. He takes my bins out. He never takes the bins out in your home, but he does it for your neighbour. Why? Because they need their support later. To them, he is the lovely man. You are the hateful one. You are the problem. He's never complained about you. He never says anything bad about you. And you're saying all these horrible things about him. You must be the problem. So lots of women are stuck because the narcissist knows exactly how to use his charm with other people. He doesn't complain about you so that he never looks like the problem. The man-child is different. The narcissistic man-child will complain about you behind your back, even when you've done nothing wrong, so that when you do eventually leave, they look like the victim. The malignant narcissist won't do this. The malignant narcissist wants to look like the best father, the best husband, and he doesn't want anyone to think that his wife or children are complaining about him. So it comes as a shock to people when they hear horrific things about him and they don't believe it. They say, no, he's the nicest man we know. He's been so generous in our community. He's donated the most to the mosque. He's done this, he's done that. So when they're malignant, they'll come across as the perfect husband or father. And when they are man-children, they come across as the victim. Okay? Just bear that in mind. Now, just quickly going back to the point I made about narcissistic men preferring to marry women from back home or from other countries, it's usually because they don't want these women to be aware of the support available for them. So, for example, if they were to marry British women here, they would know where to go for support, they know where to go for help, they know who to contact, which organisations and all of these things. But women from back home don't really know. So these men have more control over where the women go, what they do, who they contact. They know that these women don't have friends and communities here, so they have the upper hand over pretty much everything. They can dictate what she can and can't do, and this gives him more freedom and more power. Whereas when he marries someone from the country he's living in, it's more of a challenge, and he finds that difficult, and it's a headache for him, especially the malignant narcissist. Okay, the malignant narcissist wants an easy victim. He doesn't want a woman who challenges him. He will go for a woman who he can break and trap by stopping her from working, stopping her from pursuing an education, and by breaking her down, he feels powerful. And there are some malignant narcissists who really can't be bothered with all of that effort, so they choose someone from abroad and they bring her to their country because they know it's a new environment for her. She has no idea what she's doing and she is completely dependent on him. And a lot of men who do this as well marry women from abroad because their reputation in their hometown or in their home city is really bad. Okay, so if they marry a woman who is a complete stranger, she will have no idea of his history, his background, what he's done, what his community thinks of him. She won't know. She'll be clueless because he is struggling to get married to someone from his own community because everyone knows about him. So a lot of men resort to marrying women from back home so that they can get away with everything they've done. And sometimes they might go back home to marry their cousin and their uncles are aware of what they're like. But because of money, because of a British passport or an American passport, the parents of these women are completely fine with marrying them to clearly problematic men. And because of this family tie, women are stuck. Okay, some uncles and parents and aunties, they are oblivious to what's going on in another country with their nephews and nieces. However, there are lots of parents who are fully aware that their nephew or niece are highly problematic, but we're still going to get our children married to them because there are huge benefits in doing so. So be very wary when considering someone for marriage who lives abroad. I don't recommend it. I've said it 100 times before. You have to be super careful when marrying a total stranger who lives in another country. If they expect you to move to them and they know you have no friends there, no family, no support network, it's an alien country to you. You have to ask yourself, are there no women at all in his town, in his village, in his city, in the whole country? Why is he insisting on marrying me and I live on the other side of the world? Why? You've got to be really careful. There are too many women who are taking this risk. And unfortunately, they are victims of serious domestic violence and sometimes murder. You'll always find, in most cases, that the women who were murdered or were subjected to serious domestic violence were isolated. Okay, abusers will always isolate you before inflicting that level of abuse on you. And another thing that traps a lot of women is the legal system in a foreign land or even in the country they're living in. So I'll give you an example of what happened to me when I got married. I was living in Saudi, and back before Mohammed bin Salman came into power, women had to have permission from their husbands to pretty much do everything. So I couldn't travel to see my family or to complete my studies without his electronic permission. So I could go to the airport, but I wouldn't be allowed through passport control if they didn't see his electronic signature on my system. And unfortunately, because it was electronic, a man could cancel his permission at the very last minute. So you could be in the airport and he'd cancel the permission just to annoy you, just to drive you absolutely insane. Okay? These are rules and regulations that were happening at the time that many women were not prepared for or didn't understand. I didn't really understand how far men could take this and abuse the system until I got married. So I'm not saying that women should just get up and travel without the husband's permission. No, you would have their permission and they would electronically sign your passport. It's via a system called Abshir. And they change their minds later, and that's their abuse. Okay, so I'm not talking about women who run away or women who just want to be rebellious and travel and do things without informing him or asking for his permission. No, I'm against all of that, okay? I do believe that women should honour their husbands and respect them and get permission for important things like travelling. What I'm saying is that this is something extra, okay? It's a legal requirement, aside from just the normal respect you would have for your husband by asking for permission. This was a legal requirement for you to be able to travel. So you have to get over the first hurdle and then the second hurdle, which is this legal one. So if he was to stop you from travelling while you're in the airport, there's nothing you can do about it. They will send you back. You will not be allowed on that plane. So the fact that men had so much freedom to abuse women this way, and bear in mind, you can apply this to studies, getting an operation, and so many other things, right? Because even if you needed an operation, you needed to have the permission of your husband legally. If you wanted to apply for university or apply for a job, you had to have his permission legally. So it's these matters that women aren't aware of that keeps them stuck. If you don't understand the marriage laws and the divorce laws and other legal matters in the country you are moving to, or even the country you are already living in, you are going to get seriously stuck, because narcissists are notorious for taking advantage of this. It was seriously stressful for me to travel back to the UK to get my assessments done for my PhD, and also to travel for royal weddings because I was a photographer. Do you know how many times he cancelled my permission just for the hell of it, or over petty reasons? And then he would reissue the permission on the day of my flight, a few hours before my flight. He would do that just to fry my nerves, because he wanted me to go to these events being highly stressed. And it was also a reminder for me that I was trapped, that he had the ability and the power to keep me trapped whenever he wanted. The main thing that saved me from that entire situation was him knowing that I could get him into so much trouble because of my royal connections. And every time I reminded him of that, he would reissue the permission. If my clients were not royals, I would not have finished my PhD, and I would have faced legal issues by not turning up to the event as the photographer they've paid for. So he was more worried about the implications of that than anything else. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works in amazing and mysterious ways, and the only reason why I stayed for just over 2 years is because of this problem, because I was trapped by the legal system at the time. And I was also saved by the fact that I had put a condition in my nikah contract that he was not to stop me from completing my PhD. So when he complained to a sheikh about me wanting to travel and him wanting to stop me from doing certain things, the sheikh said, if you stop her, she can get a fasq. So he was forced to let me travel after that legally. And I was only able to leave that marriage after I submitted my thesis. Because once a marriage contract ends, so does his hold over me legally. So I have the freedom to travel and work and do what I need to do without his stupid electronic permission. Boy, that was the best day of my life. I tell you, the happiest day was the day I got that divorce. You have no idea. So don't take it lightly. Okay, if you go to a country that's not your country, I mean Saudi, I know Saudi, but I was living in a different city, you've got to be careful, because there will be things that you don't know or you're not prepared for, because you have no idea what kind of monsters these people will become and how they will take advantage of systems and legalities and other things to work in their favour. Another reason why so many women are unable to leave their marriages is because they asked for such a high dowry and cannot return it when they apply for a khula. So if they go to an Islamic Sharia council or a mosque to file for a divorce, the husband might demand all the dowry back in return for her freedom. So let's say a woman got £50,000. She spent it all. She doesn't have it to give back. She's stuck. She can't get help. She might have to go and take a loan from the bank or something to pay it back, and it gives her extra hardship to do that. So she decides to just stay. Okay, it's a very large amount of money or gold or anything else, and her husband knows it's going to be very difficult for her to return it. So he becomes very adamant on having it back. And the sheikh will say to you, well, it's his right. If you apply for a divorce, you should be aware that you need to give him back his dowry if he asks for it. So that's what keeps some women in that cycle. I know a woman who got £1,000,000 as her dowry, and she was stuck for years because she couldn't pay it. And the sheikh said to her, tough luck. If you can't pay it, you stay where you are. And her husband was so happy because she was trapped by that £1,000,000. So there are some men who will offer you a very high dowry to trap you, and there are men who will accept to pay a very high dowry to trap you. So my advice to all unmarried women is to not ask for a dowry you can't pay back, just in case a man you marry turns out to be an abuser and demands his dowry if you file for a divorce. So you want to be ready and able to pay back the dowry should it come to that. And inshallah, after reading my book and listening to all these podcasts, inshallah, I won't come to that, because you will know how to spot a psychopath, a narcissist, a toxic individual, a toxic codependent and whatnot. But I do know that there are some who will slip through the fence. So this is just a precaution for you to take. Yeah, if you do need to ask for that divorce, at least you know you can pay back that dowry. You won't be panicking because you can't return £50,000 I see a lot of women ask for, which is ridiculous. They want high dowries to boast about on social media and show off and everything, but they don't realise that if they've married a narcissist, they have trapped themselves in that marriage. So yes, you're free to ask for whatever you want. You can ask for 1,000,000 if you want. It's open for you. However, be sensible and be smart about it. And another reason why some women are stuck in a marriage is because they didn't receive their dowry and it's deferred as a mu'akhar. So for example, let's say in the nikah contract a large dowry is stipulated to be paid later, or that a big sum of money is to be paid to the wife if the husband divorces her later. So let's say the sum of money is £50,000. If you go and ask for a khula to escape your marriage, you have to give up your right to the dowry you haven't even received yet, and also the amount that he promised to give you if he divorced you. So you won't get it if you divorce him. So lots of women, they believe that they are at loss. They say, well, I can't give that money up. I rely on that money. I need that money. So I'm not going to ask for a khula. I'm going to stay put where I am because I need the money. So sometimes the sum is so heavy and it's difficult for a woman to sacrifice, because the man knows from the very beginning he's not going to pay it anytime soon. You're waiting for him to pay it and he keeps telling you, I can't afford it, I'll pay it soon, I'll pay it later, some things have come up, I'm in financial distress, blah, blah, blah. He's doing it on purpose to defer the dowry so that if you do escape, if you do want to leave, he doesn't have to pay it. You've got to wake up to these narcissistic tactics. That's what they do. Always ask for your dowry up front. None of this deferred, delayed stuff. If you want your dowry, ask for it up front. Otherwise, you won't see it if you're married to a narcissist. And a major sign you know someone is deliberately deferring the dowry is when you see them able to afford buying other expensive things. So they've bought a new car, they've started a new business, they've paid for new property. They'll be spending money elsewhere, but funnily enough, they don't have money for your dowry. That's when you know someone is manipulating you and deliberately deferring it to trap you. And there are lots of women who are really bothered by not receiving their dowry. They'll say, "What will the people say? I left this marriage with no dowry," or "I was a bride who never received her dowry." For them, they carry so much shame about that because people talk about things like this. So some women would rather stay in a long-term toxic marriage than be divorced with no dowry at all. So I can understand that. I can understand why that would be so upsetting, but it's not worth staying with any abuser because of the dowry. And unfortunately, most scholars and sheikhs are not abiding by Islamic law when it comes to returning the dowry and a khula. Because Islamically, a woman should only return it when she's the problem. So for example, the man is nice, he's a good guy, but she doesn't like him. She's not attracted to him. She's the one who's abusive, she's the one who's problematic. If she wants a divorce, then she needs to return the dowry to him because it's fair. However, if it's the other way round, he shouldn't take the dowry back in a khula because she is divorcing him on the basis he's abusive. So it's unfair for him to demand his dowry back as well. However, many scholars, many judges, many sheikhs have applied a blanket approach to this and state that every woman who's asking for a divorce must return it. This is wrong in Islam because it means so many women who can't afford to return the dowry will be trapped in abusive marriages to narcissists and psychopaths. So where's the evidence for this? It's found in Surah An-Nisa verse 19, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu la yahillu lakum an tarithu an-nisa'a karha wa la ta'dhuluhunna litadhhabu bi ba'di ma ataytumuhunna illa an ya'tina bi fahishatin mubayyinah wa 'ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf fa in karihtumuhunna فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. O believers, it is not permissible for you to inherit women against their will. So in pre-Islamic Arabia, women were inherited like property. So if a father died, he would pass on the women he was married to his sons and so on. So they were treated like objects. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it haram. And then he goes on to say that it is also not permissible to mistreat them, to make women return some of the dowry as a ransom for divorce, unless women are found guilty of adultery. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it haram for men to push their wives out of a divorce because they don't want to pay the dowry. So if a man is being abusive towards his wife, and he knows that if he pushes her enough, she's going to apply for a khula, and the sheikh is going to ask her to return the dowry, this is haram. This is haram for a man to do. If he's abusive, he's not entitled to the dowry. And the only time he's entitled to have it back, automatically, is when his wife commits adultery or does something else horrific. Now, if she wants to divorce him because she doesn't like him or she's not attracted to him, but he's a good man, then Islamically, out of piety and righteousness, she should offer to give the dowry back to him because it's not his fault. It's her issue with him, and by giving him back the dowry, he has a chance to marry someone else. He doesn't have to struggle to save again for a dowry and get married. So out of kindness and compassion, a woman in this situation should volunteer to give the dowry back, even if he doesn't ask for it. A woman will be rewarded for offering to give it back to him because he's a good man, okay? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, treat them fairly. If you happen to dislike them, you may hate something which Allah turns into a great blessing. So men who tell you to go and get a khula when you start complaining about them, or when you're fighting, you're at the brink of divorce, and he refuses to divorce you. He's like, I'm not going to give you a talaq. If you want a divorce, go and get a khula. Why do they say that? First of all, they want to look like the victim. Secondly, they want the dowry back. So you're divorcing him because he's abusive, but he knows very well that if you're the one filing for divorce, the sheikh will tell you to return the dowry if he's asked for it. And that's why I'm telling you, and I advise you to only ask for what you can afford to give back, because most imams and sheikhs will ask you to pay it back, even if you're not in the wrong, even if you haven't committed adultery. This is the injustice that many women are facing, unfortunately, because many Sharia councils and mosques are run by narcissistic Muslims who have corrupted Islamic law with their oppression and their ignorance and their lack of care for women's rights. So if you have to return the dowry and it's unfair, then just know those husbands will be accountable on the Day of Judgment for that. It will be a debt on their necks, and the sheikhs and the scholars and the imams who made you pay it back to them will be held accountable as well, especially if they trapped you in a toxic marriage. So if you couldn't pay it and they made you stay with him because they demanded the dowry back that you couldn't afford, if you got stuck in a toxic marriage and you got further abused because of that ruling, inshallah, you'll find a lovely, big, shiny, golden ticket to Jannah waiting for you on the Day of Judgment. Don't you worry about that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears and sees everything. Just leave it. Let Allah deal with all the injustice. Let them have it. Let them go to hell with it. We don't care. Alright? Just let it go. Don't let this dowry and injustice hold you back from moving on with your life. You will regret it if you do. It's only safe to take a large dowry from an empath man. Okay, so if you are 100% sure he is a good man, it's okay to accept whatever he offers, even if you can't afford to give it back, because he's not going to inflict abuse on you and be unjust, inshallah. So let's move on to the next point, which is women are concerned and terrified of being single mothers. And perhaps they've seen women in their families who have struggled to raise their children alone. Again, if these women don't have jobs, if they have no qualifications, if they've got no savings, they will really be afraid of raising children alone. Okay, it's very challenging to do this, and it's very stressful. And sometimes men will say to their wives that if they get a divorce, if they manage to get that khula they want, don't expect any child maintenance from me. Don't expect me to be there. I'm going to go abroad. I'm going to get married. You're going to be stuck here on your own. So again, they scare women into staying and being trapped, because they tell them all the time that if they do get their divorce, this is what's going to happen. And they know that these women are in vulnerable situations where they can't manage on their own. Maybe they don't have supportive families. Maybe they have no friends, no communities. They're isolated. Again, we go back to the whole isolation issue. And many women are also told that if they get a divorce, they'll be kicked out of the home. And sometimes he'll kick the children out too. Wallahi, I've got clients who have been kicked out of their homes in the middle of the night with their children because she managed to get a fasq or a khula, or she even asked for a divorce. How dare you even ask for a divorce? You're out on the street. Men have kicked their wives out onto the street at crazy hours and during extreme weather. When it's really cold, it's heavily raining, or even snowing. I've heard it all. These people are cruel. And they will say things like, well, it's my home. I own it. I paid for it. It's not your home anymore. You wanted the divorce? Then go and deal with all the consequences of this. You deal with them on your own. I've washed my hands off all of you. There are men out there, when they get a khula, they divorce the children too. And this is a punishment for the wife. The men tell them, if you get your divorce, I will wash my hands off all of you. It's a threat. And many women know that these men are serious, so they choose to stay. not because they want to, but because they're trapped. So they will tell people that they are staying for the sake of the children, so they can help maintain a 2-parent household, so they don't get judged by people or guilt-tripped for breaking the home. And many women will tell themselves this as well, that they are staying for the greater good for their children. And this lessens the pain of them being trapped. They'll say, well, at least I'm doing this for my children until they grow up. It's a sacrifice I have to make for them, and inshallah Allah will reward me. So they sell themselves that story, that all of this is for the sake of the children, and they tell other people who know they're suffering that they are staying to keep the family together. Some people may feel sorry for them because they know they're trapped, and other people applaud them, and they tell them, mashallah, how righteous you are as a wife to, tolerate all this suffering for the sake of the children. I'm totally against this. I've said it many times in my previous podcasts that no parent should suffer for the sake of the children and tolerate so much abuse, because it causes more harm than good, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala simply didn't ask us to do that. He didn't say divorce unless you have children, and there is no hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says divorce unless you have children. There is nothing in Islam to state that you have to stay for the sake of the children. So if someone is being abused and their mental health is at risk, and their iman is being affected, and their physical health is being affected, you have a duty upon you to put them first. Your iman comes before your marriage. So if you're being abused, you need to save yourself and your children from a toxic environment. Many people also worry about the emotional impact of divorce on children, especially if the children have a bond with the narcissistic parent. So they may beg the mother to not divorce the father, or they may beg for her to not leave because they are simply scared of being alone with him. So if he's physically abusive or verbally or emotionally abusive, they're not going to want to be alone with him. So they beg their mothers to not abandon them. And this piles on huge amounts of guilt onto these mothers who stay for the children to protect them. And if the children are guilt-tripping the mother or begging her to stay because they're bonded to the father, then mothers will often worry about the fathers turning the children against them in the future. So mothers don't want to lose their children either to the narcissistic parent who's bitter and resentful and wants revenge. So they stay because they don't want their children to hate them later. They worry the narcissistic parent will tell their children, your mother abandoned you. Your mother doesn't care about you. Your mother broke this family because she doesn't love us. She doesn't love you. I hear this all the time from people who have to co-parent with narcissists. So this is a real fear a lot of women have, and a lot of men too, and I'll come on to that later. But it's a huge reason why so many people choose to stay trapped in abusive marriages. They don't want their children growing up with mental health problems because they believe they were to blame for the divorce, or because they believe they were unloved, or because they believe they were abandoned, and all of that. So it's really very difficult to be in this kind of situation, especially when the children are very young. So when children don't understand that the marriage is already in trouble, like teenagers would, it's more painful leaving children behind because they're easily brainwashed by the narcissistic parent. However, as they get older, they start to see that the relationship is toxic, mum isn't happy, dad is always screaming and shouting. So lots of children get to the point where they're happy their parents have divorced. They're relieved when the mother leaves because they can no longer bear to see her being shouted at or physically disciplined or, abused in other ways. They would prefer their mother to leave than to endure all of that. However, when you're very young, you don't understand and you're easily manipulated by the narcissistic parent. And this is what a lot of mothers fear. Okay, they don't want their children growing up with mental health issues because of what they were told by the narc parent when they were young. And they also don't want to be hated by their children for not protecting them from the wrath of their narcissistic parents whenever they had their tantrums and rages, right? So if the children are now torn between two homes because of all of this abuse, they're going to resent their mother. If they don't understand, if they're very young and don't understand, they'll resent her for not protecting them whenever they get hit or shouted at or have things taken away from them, because it was the norm for her to jump in and save them. She would take the hit for them sometimes. She would sneak treats in for them and, she would do certain things to help them out of a situation, and she's no longer there. So some children may feel resentful because they think their mothers have given up on them and run away. Okay? So these women take all of this into account and stay. Another reason why so many women feel trapped in marriages is because they have custody concerns, or they have a fear of losing access to their children if the narc ex takes them to court. So this is also a huge reason, because there are lots of men who create false allegations in court and claim that a woman is mentally unstable, she's dangerous, she's crazy, she's abusive and manipulative and all of these things, so that he can get primary custody. And there are some women who do lose access to their children because the narcissistic husband will record her during episodes of reactive abuse. So when she starts screaming, shouting, lashing out because of him provoking her and frustrating her so much, it makes her look like she's mentally unwell. So he takes these recordings and video clips to court and uses them as evidence to take the children away. And what annoys her so much is knowing that he doesn't know how to even take care of his children. He doesn't know how to dress them. He doesn't know what they like to eat. He doesn't know what bedtime stories they like. He has no clue. He's just doing this for revenge. He knows she wants primary custody. He knows she's very attached to them. And he does all of this simply so she doesn't get what she wants, even though it's in the best interest of the children to stay with her, because they need her. They're very young. They need her. They want to be with her. But he will fight to the bitter end for custody, only to throw them to his family. And his family don't want this responsibility either. But he works all the time. He's got no time to look after the children. So he's always taking them to his mother's house, to his sister's house, to someone else's house, because he doesn't have the time to properly be there for them and have that quality time with them like the mother did. So it's a no-brainer in these situations that the children should stay with the mother. However, when there's enough evidence that a woman is mentally unwell, the judge will rule that the children are to stay in the primary care of their father, and this can be devastating for mothers. So they have no choice but to stay with these horrible men, so they're not deprived of their own children. And men will threaten them about this too. They say, if you walk away, you will never see your children again. Don't ever think that your children will be in your care. I will win a court battle for custody. I'm going to bring my lawyers. I'm going to bring the best lawyers in the city, the best lawyers in the country, the best lawyers in the whole world, so that I take the children. Don't think for a minute that you're going to win any court case. So if you want a divorce, say goodbye to your children. I'm going to take them abroad. I'm going to get married and take them to my family. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. They know all of this scares you, especially when they know that you know they have lots of recordings of you during reactive abuse. And you'll also know that when taken out of context, these recordings would be worthy of a whole Netflix documentary about you. Forget Sweet Bobby and Creepy Joe. This one will be Furious Fatma. And they'd probably drag me on there too and interview me as your therapist, asking me how the hell did you miss all of the signs? So please, my dear Fatma, spare us all. Don't react to his abuse. Don't engage when he rages. And always remember, you do not have to say anything. But It may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Okay? Remember that. Let's move on to the next point. Now, you may find this one hard to believe, but this is actually very common. And it's when women feel guilty for wanting to leave the man-child. And when I say man-child, I mean the husband. Okay, they actually worry about how this man is going to fend for himself if they leave him, if they walk away, because he's been so dependent on them for such a long time, and she's now seeing him as an extra child. The guilt of leaving him or feeling like she's abandoning him hurts her because she feels like she is doing something wrong. She activates his abandonment wound, and he reminds her of that all the time. And these women are often in the position of being providers. So they pay for everything in the home. They even cover all his expenses. He relies on her financially. And without her, he's completely lost. So this heavy dependence on her causes her to feel stuck in the marriage because she knows that he needs her. He needs her like a child needs his mother. And so lots of women stay to coddle these types of men. And they often feel this pressure when the men's families aren't supportive of them either. So they take on the masculine role, and the men take on the feminine role where they're looked after like princesses. Okay? So many women stay in these marriages for years and years and years. I'm talking 17 years, 20 years, 30 years. You know, men are in their 60s and they're still being coddled like children by their wives because they don't know how to be men. And by enabling this behaviour, you're not helping them either. You're not giving them that push to actually go out in the big wide world, in the real world, and be men. And you won't get their family support because they are so happy you have taken this burden from their hands. So even if he's a mummy's boy, she has raised him to believe that this is the comfort he deserves. He wants a comfortable, soft life where he doesn't have to fulfill his roles and duties and responsibilities. So by staying with you, he gets away with everything. And if he's not a mummy's boy, if he was neglected and abused as a child, he will look up to you as the mother he never had. You become the comfort blanket he can't sleep or live without. And this is super unhealthy for a grown man. He needs therapy for this. After years and years of mothering him, you need to say to him, Habibi Abboudi. His name's Abdullah, but he's used to you calling him Abboudi. Or Susu, if his name is Suleiman. It kills me. I can't tell you how much it kills me when I see a grown man be called Susu. It kills me. But to soften the blow, you may not want to scare him by using his full name. So say Habibi Susu, Habibi Abboudi. You're a big boy now. It's time for you to leave the nest. You'll be okay without Mama, I promise. And I'll tell you something, he's not going to like it one little bit. He'll have a tantrum. He's scared of the big wide world without his mama. And truth be told, most people are. But tough cookies. He'd stop coddling him. It's about time he grew a pair and became a good role model for the children. Because if he doesn't become a good role model for them, they're going to copy his behaviour, and you'll just have another generation of man-children who treat women in exactly the same way. So you need to find the bravery to tell Susu that it's time for him to put the tiara down. Okay? Let's move on to the next point. There are women who are stuck in marriages that were arranged by their parents and they don't know how to get out of them because they feel bad. Okay, maybe the man isn't a bad person. However, they're not attracted to him, they're not in love with him, they don't like him, but they don't want to hurt his feelings and they don't want to cause a problem in both families. They know there would be endless dramas and consequences of this, so they stay quiet. In some cultures, some women have to marry their rapists as well. So the families don't want other people to know that their daughters have been raped, so they make the rapists marry their daughters And because of this, they're stuck in marriages with men they hate, especially if they got pregnant. And there are also families who force their daughters to marry their boyfriends whom impregnated them. And this is to save them from the shame. And at this point, it doesn't even matter who the boyfriend is. They force them to get married, even if he's a drug dealer. They don't care. They force their daughters to face the consequences of their careless actions and sins. And they say, well, this is the bed you made, lie in it. We told you not to do this and you did it. We're not going to pay the price. As a family, we're not going to have our reputation damaged because of what you've done. You are no longer a virgin. You have to marry this man. Otherwise, you'll bring shame on us. So, as you may know, there are cultures that shame women for not being virgins on their wedding nights. And many fathers are terrified of this. They don't want this smeared in their face. So, they will marry their daughters to the people whom they have committed zina with, just to cover up the crisis. And many women are stuck with men they don't love. They don't like them. They were just doing it for fun. But the men they had fun with were men with lots of mental health problems. And they're violent. They've got addictions. They're horrible to their parents. They're narcissists. Right? So when women find themselves stuck with men like this, it does continue a toxic cycle, but unfortunately, because of the culture, they've been trapped. And they have no family support to help them get out of such a situation. They really well and truly are trapped. And because these men know that they are the punishment for these women, because these women have been forced to marry them, they take advantage of the situation and abuse them in all sorts of ways, especially because they know that their families don't care about them. So these marriages are highly toxic, and you can only imagine how children feel being trapped in them too. So this is one of the reasons why many women can't escape, especially when the abuser or the person they've been forced to marry is also their cousin. So lots of women feel trapped because they've married their cousin, whether by choice or because they've been pressured or forced to. They know that they could break a whole family if they were to divorce their cousin. And they simply don't want to be responsible for that, so they stay in a lifelong marriage with a cousin whom they can't stand. They had to marry him because the father said so, or because the mother said so. And they're stuck with each other sometimes. Sometimes the cousin is not a bad person, and he feels stuck with her too. And it's just a very miserable marriage where there's no love, there's no intimacy, there's no care, there's no affection. They're just forced to live with each other for the sake of keeping the whole family together. Not just the immediate family, but the extended one too. And as you already know, many women are stuck in toxic and miserable marriages because of incorrect religious beliefs that prohibit or discourage divorce. And you'll find many communities encourage families to keep marriages together to preserve the honour and reputation of the community. So they'll say things like, women who ask for divorce won't smell paradise, and they get this from shuyukh who have taken this hadith out of context. So women do have valid reasons for divorce. However, because of the cultural stigma behind it, they scare women out of asking for a divorce because they also worry that other women who are being abused will be inspired by those women, and then before they know it, loads of women will be divorcing their husbands, and this is embarrassing for the men. It's really humiliating for a man in a traditional cultural community to be divorced by a woman. They like holding that power of talaq. So when a woman goes and gets a fasq or a khula, it's embarrassing. Okay, so the elders of the community put a lid on their social issues so they don't have to deal with them and men can maintain their power. And they'll also say things like, women shake the throne of Allah when they ask for a divorce. And this is a fabricated hadith, by the way. It's a fake hadith. It's not even real. But people have been filled and pumped with fabricated and tampered hadiths to make them stay in toxic marriages, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the permission to leave if they wanted to. So this is considered to be shirk because they have different laws that oppose the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who doesn't like toxic marriages. He doesn't want us to live in misery. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that marriage is sakan, mawadda and rahmah. It's peace, it's love, it's tranquility, it's harmony, it's mercy. But yet the elders of the community and the scholars and the judges and the imams all make women feel that it's easier to get to Jannah than to get a divorce from an abusive husband. And they tell women that if they want paradise, they need to be like Asiya radiallahu anha, who put up with a tyrant. And they tell her that's your hardship in life. Or maybe this husband is your punishment in life if you've done something terrible in your past. And you can't compare women to Asiya radiallahu anha because her situation was completely different. I've explained it before. But it's used a lot to manipulate women into believing that they aren't pious enough if they're not accepting this hardship of having a tyrannical husband, and if they're not silent, tolerant and patient. Okay, you're not supposed to complain about a tyrannical husband, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says otherwise. In Surah Al-Mujadala, from verse 1 to 2, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا وَتَشْتَكِي إِلَى اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ يَسْمَعُ تَحَاوُرَكُمَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ بَصِيرٌ. Indeed, Allah has heard the complaint of the woman who pleaded with you, O Prophet, concerning her husband, and appealed to Allah. Allah has heard your conversation. Surely Allah is all hearing, all seeing. الَّذِينَ يُظَاهِرُونَ مِنْكُمْ مِنْ نِسَائِهِمْ مَا هُنَّ أُمَّهَاتِهِمْ إِنْ أُمَّهَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا اللَّائِي وَلَدْنَهُمْ وَإِنَّهُمْ لَيَقُولُونَ مُنْكَرًا مِنَ الْقَوْلِ وَزُورًا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَعَفُوٌّ غَفُورٌ. Those of you who sinfully divorce their wives by comparing them to their mothers should know that their wives are in no way their mothers. None can be their mothers except those who gave birth to them. What they say is certainly detestable and false, yet Allah is truly ever pardoning or forgiving. So before the verses of divorce came down to the Prophet ﷺ, there was a practice called dhihar. And dhihar was like a talaq back then. So when a man says to his wife, "You are to me like the back of my mother," it means she's divorced. So he's telling her, "I see you exactly like how I'd see my mother." Which means, I don't find you attractive, I can't love you like a wife, I don't desire you, and all of that. So this was considered to be emotional abuse back then. And remember, women were heavily dependent on men as well. So being divorced like this was a crisis. And lots of pagan men did this when their wives were getting older. So Khawla bint Tha'laba radiallahu anha ran to the Prophet ﷺ. She wasn't having it. She wasn't going to stay silent. She wasn't going to internalize all of this pain. She ran to him to complain and pour her heart out to him. She complained that she gave her husband all her youth and said that she had given birth to all of his children, only for him to turn around and offend her by saying she is like his mother before discarding her so easily. And she was in so much distress and so much grief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered her as well. Okay, she was heard by Allah, and Allah sent down the verses to the Prophet ﷺ in response to her, and he also gave the Prophet ﷺ a response in regards to what to do with this emotionally abusive husband. So this surah teaches us that women should refuse emotional injustice. They should refuse physical abuse and any other kind of abuse, and they should go and complain to an elder about it, to a mediator, to an imam, to someone who will listen. Because women have worth, women have rights. So, this goes against cultural teachings, which is women don't matter. Your rights don't matter. You need to stay silent. You need to tolerate this. You need to, be pious and righteous and be a martyr for your husband and his abuse. Because if you're not, then you're not a woman of paradise. When the most righteous women at the time of the Prophet ﷺ would go and complain to him about their husbands. Even the wife of Umar radiallahu anhu went to the Prophet ﷺ to complain about his strictness. She said, Ya Rasulullah, he's too strict, help me. And he was strict because of his jealousy over his wife. So she went to the Prophet ﷺ to find a solution for this. So it was normal back then to go and complain about any abuse you were going through, or if you were really struggling in dealing with your husband. Islam encourages you to go and talk. However, culturally, women are told not to. They are told that they will be backbiting their husbands if they go and complain about him to other people, and that they'll be harming his reputation and his honor. However, show me a verse in Surah Al-Mujadala where the Prophet ﷺ replied to Khawla and told her, stop backbiting your husband. Go back home. It's haram to complain about him. Be grateful you have a husband. Be grateful you have a family. He didn't say that to her. He listened. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent her a solution. So when people tell you to not talk, it's because they don't want narcissistic behavior to be exposed. Okay, narcissists hate people who open the eyes of their victims. Okay, they rage about it. I know I have so many haters. Trust me, I know. Because of this. But this is the reason why they don't want you talking. And they don't want you having a support network. And they don't want you having caring friends and family members around you who will open your eyes to abuse. Because as long as you're around people who tell you to stay quiet, internalize it, stay silent, accept it, they're happy. As soon as you have that one friend or that one person in the community who tells you this is abuse, you should stand up to this, you shouldn't be accepting this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not ask you to accept this, they go into a rage. All of a sudden, this friend is a shaitana. All of a sudden, this family member is an enemy. Your parents are now enemies. Your mother wants to ruin your marriage. Your father is manipulative. Your sister is evil. She's jealous of you. She wants to ruin the family home that we have. That's what they start saying when they realize that that person is opening your eyes to abuse. Some people tell me their husbands and wives go into rages when they listen to my podcasts. It's like something boils inside them and a shaitan just comes out because it's too much exposure. And these people want you to believe you're trapped. They want you to believe that you're stuck, so you can't get out, so you don't have hope in leaving. They want you to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you there. They want you to believe you're being pious by staying, and that this is what marriage is. This is what's considered normal. So it's important for you to understand that Islam already addresses this. It addressed it over 1,000 years ago, because men used to do this to their wives. So know that tolerance of any abuse is not from Islam. It never has been. Okay, it came from culture. And not just any culture. Toxic patriarchal cultures that were run by misogynistic men. Okay? And then a lot of women find that if they do manage to escape, they do manage to leave, they have to face the next hurdle, which is the cruelty of the community that shames them for being divorced. So the cultural norms that stigmatize divorced women stops them from leaving. Because when they see what's happened to other divorced women, they say to themselves, actually, I don't think I could face that. I don't want people to say to me, you brought shame to us. Because those who have suffered with shame since childhood will be majorly triggered. Because women who were shamed by their parents will run from being shamed again by their community, so they'll stay silent and tolerate abuse. They just watch and they see what happens to other women, and it terrifies them. They don't want to be marginalized, they don't want to be exiled from the community, they don't want to be treated like a criminal for breaking the family home, or looked at as being damaged goods because they're now single mothers. They run away from all of that. They run away from how people make them feel, and also from their harsh judgments. So many women observe what happens to other divorced women, and it stops them from speaking out and standing up for themselves and saving themselves and their children from a toxic marriage and home environment. And sometimes it's not toxic, but women are so fed up of dealing with a man-child that it drives them mad. But they're stuck in that marriage because of the community and what people might say. So, like I said before, pagan men would say to their wives, "You are to me like the back of my mother." And this was seen as something insulting because the men didn't want to marry women who are like their mothers. They didn't look for a mother in women. However, in 2025, many men are looking for wives who will be their mothers. So man-children will stay in marriages with empaths who are like their mothers. How crazy is that? Look how the tables have turned. Men used to divorce their wives because they were like their mothers, and men now choose wives because they are the mothers they never had. So it's important for people to understand that it's not normal for a man to treat you like his mother at all. Okay? A wife is a wife. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, these women are your wives. They are not your mothers. You cannot treat these women like your mothers. These are wives who have rights. You have responsibilities over them. So when women carry the responsibilities of men, they turn masculine over time, and this creates a toxic environment for them to live in. But women are trapped because of the community and how they understand Islam and the guilt they feel towards this man-child, like I said before, and the guilt they feel towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't want to upset Allah. So they stay in the marriage, but they feel the burden of looking after this man-child, and the resentment builds up. And when resentment builds up, they become more toxic themselves because this man is not allowing them to live in their feminine. And the more they believe they are staying for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more they'll lose their faith. Okay, so their faith starts to deplete because they've stepped into a role Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not asked them to step in. So they feel the burden, they feel the heaviness of it. And then they start to question, Ya Allah, why are you asking me to stay in a marriage I'm not happy in and look after this big grown man, this 6-foot susu, who's driving you nuts because you've been taught that this is the right thing to do. That's how a lot of women lose their faith in these marriages, because they believe that this is what Allah wants them to do. And it's too much of a burden. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I will not give you a burden more than you can carry. So when you carry the burdens and responsibilities of men towards men, of course you're going to burn out. Of course you're going to hate your life. And you'll definitely feel masculine. Before you know it, you'll be growing a beard and a moustache and hitting the gym. People lose their faith when they have the wrong perception of Allah and the wrong understanding of Islam. That's how you know you haven't understood it properly. Okay? So when you're trapped in these kinds of marriages because of these issues, know that you have taken a role on that you're not meant to be taking. And that's why you're so miserable. That's why you feel stuck. And that's why your marriage has given you so many faith issues. Okay? It's really important for you to understand that. There are also women who are trapped in marriages because of their fear of retaliation, heightened conflict, and increased abuse from a husband. So these women fear domestic violence if they were to attempt leaving, or if they were to ask for a divorce. Some of them even fear being murdered because their husbands have threatened them that if they were to divorce them or leave the family home, they would hunt them down and murder them. And it happens a lot, unfortunately. Some fathers tell this to their daughters as well. Some brothers say this to their sisters, that if you do X, Y, Z, we will kill you. We will murder you. We will do this, we'll do that. So women are silenced, and they're stuck in toxic marriages and toxic homes with their parents because of constant threats of murder. Some of these women have even survived murder attempts So I have a client who told me that her father tried to drown her in the bath. He'd fill it up and push her head in the water until she begged for mercy. I know this is super triggering, but these are things that women are going through behind closed doors no one knows about. And her father is someone very well known in his community. He's a member of the mosque committee. So he's very well respected, but they have no idea what he's like behind closed doors. And there are also narcissistic men who create false allegations and get their female relatives arrested. They have no ghira, they have no care that these women will be spending the night in police cells and would have to take off their hijabs as well. I tell you, there's a very special place in hell for people like this. I really struggle sometimes to listen to stories during sessions because I am told about all the cruel things that men do to women to keep them stuck and trapped in miserable toxic marriages and family homes. One of my clients was caught by her husband speaking to a brother who was helping her to escape. So there was no affair or anything. He works for a charity and he tried to help her escape a dangerous situation because she was being physically abused regularly. And unfortunately, when her husband found out, he went ballistic and he took his belt and flogged her. He said, if I was to take you to any Sharia council in the UK, none of them would give you your due punishment for zina. And he said, I will take it upon myself to flog you as a punishment for the zina you committed. There was no zina. It's just because he caught her talking to another man who was helping her escape. These malignant narcissists are psychopaths. I don't think a lot of women understand how dangerous these people can be if you choose to stay with them. And lots of women have the support they need to escape these kinds of marriages, but they have hope he will change. They have hope someone so malignant, so harsh, so abusive, so physically destructive can change one day. They make dua for him. They say, he's the father of my children. I need to stay. Inshallah, things will get better. What will people say? What will people think? I don't want to be a divorcee. I'd be left on my own as a single mother, and so on. So these are women who have a choice. They see malignant behavior in their husbands but choose to stay. I'm not talking about those who are stuck now. Those who choose to stay because of their codependency and being trauma bonded. So a lot of women focus on the good times and possibly a long history. So maybe they met each other when they were 16 and they've been together ever since. Maybe they've just been married for such a long time, or the marriage was very good in the beginning and it turned very toxic later on. Maybe he didn't start off as malignant. Maybe he became malignant after going through the man-child phase. So these women find themselves in repetitive cycles of reconciliation and disappointment, and that's what keeps them in a trauma bond. And sometimes intimacy bonds them, but these women are getting beaten up. These women are getting verbally abused daily. These women are being emotionally, spiritually, and even religiously manipulated and abused. But they choose to stay because they want to focus on the good, but this is harming them. Okay? Now, just quickly going back to the story of the man who flogged his wife, these matters are matters for the court. You can't take it in your own hands as a Muslim to inflict this kind of punishment on anyone. So, problems like adultery need to be dealt with in a court. This is not for you to take into your own hands. A judge must assess the whole case and make a ruling on it based on the evidence provided. And 99% of the time, no flogging happens because of the oaths that get taken anyway. So men who do this are beyond despicable, beyond evil. And that's why there's a special place in hell for them. Because they're going against the Sharia, especially when they inflict these punishments on innocent women. So I just wanted to make a note of that because I do hear it in sessions and it's heartbreaking. After he flogged her, he panicked and he ran away. He actually left the country and ran away back to Pakistan. But alhamdulillah, if he didn't do that, she wouldn't have been able to escape. And she managed to get help from a women's charity. And now she's getting therapy and counselling for her trauma. When I asked her what made her stay for so long from the beginning, she said her family is worse than him. Her brothers are worse, her father is worse, her uncles are worse. And she said it was easier for her to deal with one abuser than deal with 5. Subhanallah. How sad is that? And because she'd come from such a violent family, she married the same kind of man. I told you, you'll gravitate to what you're used to. You'll gravitate to what's familiar. She saw signs of domestic violence in him very early on, but she stayed. And she said, I could have got help back then. I could have, called a domestic violence shelter. I could have called the police. I could have done so many things, but I was used to it. She said, I was used to men like this, and I just dealt with it until it got worse. And there was a point in her marriage where she did call the police on him after he really hit her badly. And she said he got 10 times worse because I went back. She said, after I called the police on him and he got arrested, and then they released him on bail, and he came back home, she said he was 10 times worse. When you are in a situation like this with a malignant narcissist, calling the police on them and knowing you're going to go back or knowing you're going to stay is a recipe for disaster. If you're going to call the police on someone like this, you can't go back. You can't be in the house because they will punish you so badly for calling the police on them. They will punish you every time you get someone involved who will hold them accountable and punish them for their actions. They never take that lightly. So it's dangerous to do this to them and think that they're going to get better and think that they're going to change their ways because the police gave them a slap on the wrist. No, it gets worse. Because in their minds they're thinking, how dare you get other men to hold them accountable and break their ego like that? You think that's going to go unpunished? Absolutely not. Okay, you've got to be really careful. There are other women who stay stuck in marriages because they are being blackmailed about their past. So, for example, maybe a husband is blackmailing her about revealing her major sins. Maybe they were in a haram relationship before marriage and she's from a very religious family and they might disown her or get really upset with her or stop talking to her if they were to find out that happened. Maybe she got pregnant before marriage and that's why he married her so quickly. Whatever he has as a hold over her, he will use that to keep her stuck in the marriage because she fears for her reputation and she doesn't want to be divorced or kicked out on the street, and maybe she fears domestic violence as well and abuse from her family. And sometimes these women will be in positions of, being Quran teachers or scholars or preachers or coaches. So they worry that if this information came out about them, it would ruin their religious image. Okay, they worry about how people will see them, they'll lose their credibility, and people will think they're fake. They may have really turned their lives around and they would have repented from everything they did. But the release of these secrets could cause serious damage to their career. And they'll be perceived as hypocrites and people will stop trusting them. And this terrifies them. They don't want to be seen as the person they used to be in their past. They want to be seen and known as the person they are now. And the husband knows this. So he will hold this over them and he will always threaten, if you leave, I'm going to tell your parents everything. And if you divorce me, I'm going to create a YouTube video about you, exposing everything you've done and everything we used to do. And then watch your reputation crash and burn to the ground. And Muslims have done this. I'm seeing these videos online where people are coming out about their ex-husbands and ex-wives, exposing everything. And the people they're exposing are prominent figures in the community. So know this, when a narcissist wants to tear you down, they know your weak points. They know what you care about. If you care about your reputation, that's the first thing they're going to attack. They're going to create videos about you. They'll start posting about you on Instagram because they don't let you leave without them destroying you first. So if you've built a great reputation for yourself in both your community and the online community, that will be the first thing they attack. And they blackmail you with it because they know that will terrify you. They know that people admire you and look up to you. So if information like that was to come out about you and it causes people to doubt you and lose trust in you, that's going to devastate you. There are people who have committed suicide from this because they couldn't take the loss of their good reputation that they had spent years and years building. So the longer you stay with these narcissists, the more tools you give them to destroy you. I can't say this enough. I know they're going to absolutely hate this video. I don't care. This is what they do. They look for where they can attack you. They know your weak points. They take all your secrets in the beginning. They take all info about your major sins and they use them when they need them. They use them as ammunition when the time comes. This is why they love taking your secrets. This is why they try to pull them out of you, reel them out of you. I said this 100 times. Don't tell people your secrets. There are things that Islamically you don't even need to tell people. So if you were to reveal them to the wrong person, this is what they're going to use them in. Okay? It's to destroy your reputation. When the time comes, they hold on to them. They'll hold on to them for years. They will not say a word about them. But they've banked them for the right time to keep you trapped. Okay? It's always to keep you trapped and to keep you living in fear. There are also women who have been trapped in marriages because of the emotional manipulation and gaslighting that undermines their self-confidence. So, for example, they could be gaslit and told that this is what marriage is like. Everyone goes through this. All women suffer in marriage, but you don't see it because they don't talk about it, because they're good wives, they're righteous wives, they're pious, they don't complain about their husbands. But all women go through this because this is how men naturally are. Men are naturally abusive. They all shout, they all scream, they're all misogynistic. So lots of women are told this and they just put up with it. They're like, well, okay, I guess all men are like this. All men cheat, all men abuse, all men are vile. Okay, so be it. I'm not better than my aunties, I'm not better than my sisters or my mom. They all went through it, it is what it is. And unfortunately, they hadn't come across good examples of healthy masculine men for them to realise that this isn't normal. It's not normal for men to be like this. And then they have a fear of being judged as a bad person if they do decide to one day leave, if they do want a divorce, because they look around them and see all other women are tolerating their horrible husbands. So if they get out of their marriage, they worry that people might think there's something wrong with them rather than the other way around, because they've normalized men's toxic behavior. So if a woman leaves or a woman gets divorced, she's immediately judged and seen as someone who's not good. She's not a good person. He must have divorced her because she's not a good person. And this reduces her chances of getting remarried in her community. So some women think about this and their fear of the future and not wanting to be single mothers or be single for a long time because they can't be alone, right? Codependents can't be alone, neither can narcissists. That fear of being alone is more crippling than staying with the abuser. And this is how you know you've entered into toxic codependency, when you'd rather stay with your abuser than be alone. And toxic codependents usually have a reason to stay that makes it bearable for them to tolerate an abuser, and it's usually money or intimacy. So if the sexual relationship is good with the abuser, they'll stay. And if they have a good lifestyle with the abuser, they'll stay as well. So they want to leave, but they can't because they have one of those benefits or both. And that's why you find many women stay with wealthy abusers, because of the lifestyle and the money and everything that they can have. So they don't want to go back to poverty after a divorce or have a downgraded lifestyle. It scares them because they're so used to luxury now. They're so used to having everything they want and not worrying about money, not worrying about rent and bills and all of those things. And if it's about the sexual relationship, then they fear being celibate for too long because it's very difficult to get married. So some women would prefer to be with the abuser and have intimacy with the abuser instead of remaining celibate and waiting for someone good to marry. And this takes me to my next point, which is many women believe that they don't deserve a good man. So they accept to stay in their situation. So for example, they may have committed sins in the past, they may have had a dark past, they may have done things that they're not proud of, and they believe that this is what they deserve. They're not deserving of a good man. They're not deserving of love and kindness and compassion. And people tell them this, especially their parents. You're going to get a horrible husband when you're older. He'll be your punishment and you accept it. So childhood trauma can also make people feel this way. So if you've been programmed since childhood to believe that you're not deserving of anything good, you can take this belief into your adult life and you can apply it to your relationships and all your opportunities. And you'll self-sabotage what's good because you always believe you don't deserve what you want. You don't deserve the best of what you can get. So you settle and you believe this narc husband is the best you can have despite all of his abuse. Especially if he's always telling you that you are lucky to have him. Especially if he's got money, especially if he's good looking or he's got status. He will always remind you that you are lucky to have him. So you settle. Okay, you accept that and you settle and you depend on this relationship for your self-worth. You might also believe that good men don't exist and that's why you stay with an abuser. So you believe all men are horrible. You've never seen good men. And because you've not seen them, you believe that they don't exist. It's all fairy tales. It's all Disney. These good empath men don't exist. I'm just going to stay where I am. And this is going to be my jihad and nafs. This is going to be my hardship for the rest of my life. I accept that upon myself. Because I believe good men don't exist. When you keep telling yourself that, you justify staying in something that's destroying you. Okay? And some people also lose their identity outside the role of wife or mother. So maybe they gave up their career to be married. Maybe they gave up their dreams, their passions, their hobbies. And they've been confined to the roles of being wives and mothers. And they've accepted that. And that's okay. If that's what makes you happy, there's no issue with that. But women who feel depressed because of it later realize that they are a nobody. They have no identity. They have no personality because their only roles in life are to be wives and mothers. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they like anymore. They don't enjoy things anymore because they're trapped. They're trapped in these roles. They're not fulfilling these roles out of love, out of wanting to, not out of happiness. They're fulfilling them because they're forced. They're forced to stay with these husbands and they're forced to raise children in toxic homes, so they lose themselves in these marriages. And that's why many just surrender and give up on life and give up on themselves. Sometimes during sessions, when I ask clients what do they enjoy doing, they don't know. They have no answer. What kind of activities do you like? They don't know. What would you like to try? I don't know. They've lost their will to live properly. They've lost their joy for life because they're trapped. It's like being in prison. And this is why so many married women suffer from very deep depression. Sometimes women who are so used to just fulfilling their roles as wives and mothers will feel responsible too for the toxic abuser's well-being. So they may want to leave the marriage, however, they feel bad because he's unwell. He may have cancer. He may be suffering from depression himself, and they don't want to abandon him. He may be threatening to commit suicide if she leaves, and that causes her to stay. She doesn't want this hanging over her conscience all the time. And she doesn't want to bear the responsibility if she one day hears that his situation deteriorated because no one was there to look after him during his illness, or that he really did commit suicide. She doesn't want to carry that guilt. And unfortunately, lots of narcissists do use the suicide card. And they do this to scare you because they know your empathy won't allow you to abandon them or leave them in this mental state. Okay, but it's all manipulation. Narcissists really fear death. So you'll end up being with them for the rest of your life if this manipulation keeps working on you. You need to help him get therapy and for him to talk to a professional about his suicidal thoughts. And like I said before, this can be applied to all relationships. So sometimes friends will do this to you, your parents, your siblings, even your own toxic children will manipulate you this way if you let them. Okay? Another reason why many women stay trapped in marriages is because of complicated divorce laws and processes. So for many, the legal process can be scary and also very stressful. Sometimes they fear losing assets. So if they own a home, they're worried that their husband will take half, and they might take half of their business or pension too. So, like I said, these narcissists are great at creating false allegations. So if you are dependent on your assets to survive after a divorce, and you fear your abuser will take all your assets or at least half of your assets, then it can cause you to stay in a toxic marriage where you're trapped. And there's also a fear of very long legal battles. So lots of women aren't equipped emotionally to deal with these legal battles, and sometimes they can go on for years. So if they've seen other women go through horrific legal cases and battles with their narcissistic exes, it will definitely put them off because they're not ready for it. Emotionally, they are not ready or prepared to deal with all the grief and stress that comes with this experience. Okay, it's a really draining, difficult and traumatizing experience to go through when you're in court with a narcissist. Okay, it's not for the weak. It's very difficult. People actually need to be coached before they go to court with a narcissist because of how difficult it is. It's not easy. And another issue that a lot of women worry about and causes them to stay trapped is the legal fees. So when you go to court with a narcissist, you have to be prepared to spend a lot of money on solicitors and lawyers because they do like to drag the whole process out. So if women don't have supportive friends and family members and communities, they're not going to be able to afford fighting for their rights and also for custody of the children, especially if there are allegations. It's not going to be possible. It's too expensive. And they may not be eligible for legal aid. So when they think about all of these factors, it just becomes easier for them to stay where they are and accept being trapped. And sometimes women will worry about their immigration status if it's tied to the marriage. So if a man brought her from abroad to marry him and live in his country, her documentation may be pending. She may have family now in that country, and she may have started work or university. So all of that will be disrupted if she went to ask for a divorce. So she stays until she completes her studies or until she receives her paperwork that she needs to be a legal resident before she applies for a khula. And this process can take years, so women can be trapped for years because of their immigration status too. And last but not least, another reason why women are trapped in marriages is because of black magic. Okay, I've left this to be the last point because I don't like it when people blame black magic for everything when there are valid reasons for women being trapped. So if black magic has been done, more often than not it's been done by the in-laws or the family of the woman to keep her stuck there. It's not common practice for men to do this to their wives. Black magic is usually done by the evil women in the family. So as you can see, leaving a difficult, toxic and unhealthy marriage isn't easy. And you don't even have to leave one if it's safer to stay. If you're in that situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will compensate you and rescue you when the time is right. So I'm speaking to those who have no family support, they've got no friends, no money, no nothing to help them out. Sit tight, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will rescue you, just make dua for it. And it doesn't matter if you're in a marriage, if you're living with your parents, your toxic siblings, whoever you're living with, if you are suffering with them, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rescue you. And you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open a way, or He'll send you people to help you, or something will happen to your abuser to free you. Okay, so just have that faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's going to answer your dua. Please listen to podcast number 57 if you haven't already. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, I'm recording this to create an awareness of what many women go through, and inshallah I'm going to do a part 2 because it's already 1 hour and 44 minutes and I don't want this to drag to 3 hours. So inshallah I'll separate them. This will be part 1 and the one for men will be part 2. And it's just so people can have compassion for those who grieve a life they wish they had, or a life they could have had, right? Where they could have chased their dreams and, had different marriages, loving husbands, and a better life in general, a better quality of life. There are lots of people out there who are grieving this loss because they never got to experience this, and they wasted so many years trapped with an abuser because it's dangerous to leave, or because they're not healed, or because they're trauma bonded, and for all the reasons I've mentioned previously. So it's important to be kind. It's important to not judge. It's important to not shame people for staying with toxic abusers. You don't know the reasons why they're staying. Lots of people need help and support and therapy to get out of these situations. And some, subhanallah, it really is their test in this life to be stuck with a malignant narcissist who is physically abusive and psychotic. Inshallah, when I have the time, I'll record a podcast that takes a deep dive into the mindset of a psychopath so you can understand how they think and learn the best way to escape them. Honestly, when unmarried women see married women in these situations, it puts them off marriage. There are so many women now who are terrified of getting married because they don't want to be trapped like this. They don't see marriage as being safe anymore. And of course, there are good men out there, but when women are surrounded by men who are evil, they're narcissistic, they're psychopathic, they have no empathy towards women, it can become very scary. And that's why there's a huge increase in women who are choosing to focus on their careers instead of getting married because the risk is simply too high. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope you have found this podcast beneficial, inshallah, and that I haven't missed out any important reasons. If I have, please do list them below in the comment section so other people can benefit. Please don't forget to like the podcast if you found it helpful, and kindly share it with others who could benefit from this. Thank you for listening if you're still with me, and I'll speak to you inshallah in the next podcast, which will be part 2 for the men. So until then, inshallah, take care of yourselves, may Allah bless you, and may Allah relieve the hardships of everyone who is trapped. May you be rewarded for your patience and compensated for your suffering, and may you find relief and happiness in both lifetimes, inshallah. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.